Hi, everyone, and welcome to our EdTech Teacher introductory session. We're going to be exploring a little bit more about the AI Essentials cohort class that we have running this year. We have two different cohorts. One's going to be running once a month throughout the school year, and we also have a second AI Essentials cohort that's going to be twice a month. We're going to go over some of the logistics there. Without further ado, let's dive right in. So if you go to the landing page for the course, we do have some information here to talk a little bit about the what and the why behind it. So at EdTechTeacher, we actually started back in 2003, and our primary goal is how do we help educators in the classroom? How do we help them thrive given these rapid changes in education and particularly with educational technology? So that's squarely been our focus, and we're still doing that. So over the past few years, as everyone's kind of realized that AI is becoming a huge part of life, not just education across the world. So it's impacting educators on the front lines. And it happened fast. So what we started to do is think about how can we provide support for teachers across the world that are grappling with this, and then also with school leaders that are trying to design policies and design supports for their teachers. Now, we primarily do on-site workshops, either live virtual or in the schools, but we found that one way that we can reach out and work with more educators and help more people is to do an online course. So what we did is last year we launched our first AI cohort. Actually, it was the spring before that. We did a smaller version of it, but we just had teachers from around the US and some international that would jump in, and we would meet at first it was weekly, then we moved to a monthly model just to explore all different aspects of AI in education. And it was really popular last year. A lot of folks joined it, so we decided we're going to run another version of it, but we're going to have two different types based on the feedback that we got. Some folks wanted once a month. Other folks wanted to do it a little bit quicker, wrap it up in around four months, but do it every other week. So what is it that we're going to be discussing? Well, a lot of it came from what teachers were sharing with us, and they had a lot of questions. They were asking themselves a few different questions around what AI actually is. What are some high quality tools that we can use in our classroom? What should students be using, if at all? How can I help design policies around this? We had a lot of different questions that were thrown at us. We decided, all right, how can we create different modules and topics along the way to provide some guidance and resources for folks that joined our course? So when you sign up for this, you're going to get a few different things. The first is we have live interactive workshops. That's the heart of this. Each one's 90 minutes, and it's going to be a mix of direct instruction by the instructor leading it. So it'll be myself, Ali McCrary, and Sean McCusker. So me and Sean will be running the accelerator cohort, which is twice a month. Ali is going to be doing the once a month cohort that goes throughout the year. And we try to make that a mix of providing information, providing some resources and some tutorials and guidance, but also giving you the space to collaborate with other folks that are in the sessions, because we feel like that is one of the key points of this is that this is a social endeavor. We're learning together about this, asking each other questions and getting perspectives from different schools around the world. So that's the first part of it. The second part is we provide a ton of teaching resources for you. So we have a library of downloadable resources, including slides, presentations, strategy guides, tutorials, lesson plans, videos. Every single one of the sessions will also be recorded and shared with you as a resource. So you'll have access to all of that. And we do know people get busy, and it is a big time commitment. 90 minutes, typically for a lot of teachers that are doing this is going to be after school, and we get it. So we actually have a lot of folks that might just view the recordings of this and reach out to us after for questions. That is perfectly fine for us. Is whatever works for you guys works for us. The third part is that individual support. So at any point during these cohorts, if you want to meet with us, we are going to be available for some drop-in sessions. Sometimes we may schedule one at a certain time. But if you wanted to just reach out to us and say, hey, Tom, can we meet for 15, 20 minutes after school one day to talk about something? That is part of this course. We are here to support you. And then the last piece is that if you are looking to get PDPs, or every region has a different name for it, but basically professional learning hours, we can provide proof of that particular PD credit, but also graduate credits. So if you're interested in an optional graduate credit through the course, we will issue it through Worcester State University. So whether it's regular PDP hours that you need for your certification or you just need for your school district, or if it's graduate credit, we have those options as well. Now, the way it's going to be formatted is we're going to have the monthly cohort live 90-minute sessions once a month. It's going to be 7 to 8:30 Eastern time. It's always going to be on a Wednesday, and you can see the dates there. The accelerator cohort is live 90-minute sessions every 2 weeks from 7 to 8:30, same time, but it's going to be on Tuesdays. And you can see here, this actually wraps up before the holidays around December 17th. September 3rd is coming up quick, though, depending on people's schedules. I know that's the start of the year and things are a little bit chaotic sometimes, so we may push that back. So we may actually have September 17th as our start date. So keep an eye on that. We'll put out some communication if we do decide to push that back a bit. Okay, so that's the way that it's going to be set up. Now, what does the curriculum look like? Now, we don't need to go through all of the details here, but these are the topics. So if you want to see some of the more nuances of each topic, we're going to go through each week. This kind of lines up our curriculum for the scope of it. Now, we are open to shifting as well. We know this is a fast-moving topic and things change rapidly. So if there are things that we want to push into the course that come up throughout the school year, we may do that. Also based on the people that sign up. So if we find that most of our cohort's really interested in, say, for instance, building out case studies of student use in the classroom in safe and responsible ways, and we're like, hey, we want to spend 2 sessions just on that, we're going to do it. Okay, so a lot of this is going to be based on feedback from teachers that are part of our cohorts, but this is going to be the building blocks that we use. As far as the instructors, I introduced myself, but we also have Ali McCurry, as I mentioned, and Sean McCusker. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about them, you can click on those learn about buttons there and you can get a little bit of background. Both of them were planning on being here tonight, but unfortunately we just had some things come up where there was some work conflicts, but also they're actually fighting some things right now regarding sicknesses going around. I think back to school time, a lot of things are flying, so hopefully they'll be back at it. But feel free to reach out to them as well if you have any questions about the course. And actually, all of us are very active on social media as well, so feel free to reach out to us on that if you follow any of those channels, and we will be happy to answer any of your questions. Okay. As far as some of the content of the course, so the first thing we like to start with, and this is just a quick overview of some of the things that we'll be covering. The first is, why would we even be focusing on AI in education? And I feel like that's really the main question that's out there. There's a lot of AI resources, a lot of people are jumping into this, including ed tech companies. So why would we spend valuable time learning about this? We already have a full plate. Like every teacher has this huge curriculum that they have to cover. I remember when I taught, you look at the curriculum, you almost laugh at the beginning. They're like, how am I going to get through all this? We already have a lot to teach. We have a lot of PD that's probably already lined up. So it's going to take a lot to learn this stuff. So why put in the effort? Why put in the time and resources? Well, the first is that AI is undoubtedly impacting our world in profound ways. And that's the world of work, that's in civic life, it's in your daily life. It's just becoming part of our new reality. It's also becoming the new reality for students. And we'll also discuss that AI has already been a big part of your life for a while, whether we think about it or not. The one big difference is generative AI, which came out the last couple of years, but we'll break that down a bit in the course. The second is that teachers across the world are already experimenting with AI tools, right? So we've met hundreds of teachers over the past year that are doing amazing things with AI in their classrooms. So we want to be able to share those best practices. The reason why we want to share best practices is that the results have been mixed. And teachers will even tell us this, like some of the technologies are good, but some are not quite ready yet. Some of them, maybe it's more of a distraction than it's helpful. So something that we always do at EdTechTeacher is we're honest with you, right? If something doesn't really work well, we're going to tell you. If there's an app that's really not landing for teachers and for students, we're going to tell you that. So this course is going to be just as much about what you should be using, but as much it's about what you maybe don't want to be using. Right. So this isn't just, us being cheerleaders for AI and saying, go out and use all the AI apps that are out there. We are not. If anything, people come to EdTech teachers to help sift through all the junk that's out there and say, all right, this is what's really valuable. This will help our kids learn. And then the third part is students are already using this. And anybody who's watching this, that's a teacher, knows that this is becoming, if not is already a huge challenge because primarily kids are using it to cheat on assignments. Let's just say it how it is, especially at the high school level. So, given that they're already using these tools, we need to think about one, how do we address that challenge right now because it is an issue. But two, what are some ways that we can redesign the learning experience so that they have the opportunity to use it in responsible ways and to learn more about these tools because they're using them anyway. It's very similar to, I've heard this analogy a long time, but it's kind of the idea of, giving, the driver's license before they took driver's ed, type thing. Like we're not giving them an opportunity to learn how to use these tools and they're just out using them all the time. And a lot of them are going to be using them in college without any experience on how to do it effectively, which is actually becoming a challenge at the higher ed level as well. So those are just three reasons why there has been this focus and this shift to AI. And and I know what a lot of people think in the back of their mind. I get it. It's like, oh, here's a new trend. I'm not going to jump on this bandwagon because it'll be something different next time. I've I've been through a lot of trends in education and a lot in ed tech. This is different, right? And I think anybody who's learned a little bit more about this understands that this is more of a fundamental shift, not just in education, but across the board. So it is something that we do have to take seriously. So how do we approach it at ed tech teacher? When I've been working with schools over the past year, I like to focus on three distinct steps, right? Or buckets of understanding. The first one is that I really think that it starts with gaining a deeper understanding of how this actually works. And once you understand how it works, why it matters. Because once you have a better understanding of how generative AI actually works, you're going to better understand its limitations as well as what it's good at. Because there are some things that generative AI can be very good at that can be very helpful, and there's some things that it's actually really not good at all. So I think understanding that is going to be an important piece of this. And when we have teachers come out of this cohort, we don't want them using an AI tool and just saying, "Wow, I that's awesome. I have no idea how it worked, but I clicked a button and it happened." We want you to be empowered to know what's happening when you click that button when you generate text, and that's going to help you in the long run. So, just one example is we actually spend a good amount of time in our cohorts breaking it down. When ChatGPT or Gemini or any one of those other large language models, when they write something and when you write a prompt, what happens? How does it create that text that comes back to you? What information does it process? What computation does it perform? Or in other words, what does it do? Now, even if you have no background in computer science, that's okay. Um, Frankly, most teachers don't, the vast majority of teachers don't, and that's okay. So what we do is we break this down in layman's terms so that it's easy to understand. It doesn't mean it's an easy concept, but we try to break it down so that it's more in plain English. We don't use a lot of computer science terminology, but we want to empower you to know like what is happening behind the scenes. The second piece of this is we want to also quickly transition to the practical application of this as an educator. How can this help you hone your craft and focus on what matters most to you? There are a ton of ways that teachers have used AI to enhance teaching. But you may not need to use 1,000 different versions of AI tools to help you on all these different tasks. You may just have a few that you want to hone in on, right? It might be, I want to use this to help differentiate some of my assignments. I may use some of these tools because, maybe I want to speed up the feedback cycle for students, or maybe I just want to create more creative lesson ideas. Regardless of the use case, there's a lot of ways that teachers around the world are already using this to help them teach. Right. So step one is to learn how does this work? Step two is how can it help me teach? So we start with the main large language models that are out there. So we go through ChatGPT, Gemini, and Copilot are the big ones. We'll also address Claude, Perplexity, ChatPDF. We like to start there because once you know how to use those tools to help you teach, that really expands your capabilities in the other platforms that are coming out down the road. So, a lot of folks use EdTech specific tools for teachers on the AI front, but you don't necessarily need to. We'll get to that in a second, but you can do a lot of those same tasks just by going straight to ChatGPT or straight to Gemini. So one example would be if you wanted to create a rubric, right? So this is one of the first activities we go through. For instance, my colleague Sean, the prompt was create a writing rubric for a sixth grade history class using the National Council of Teachers of English Standards. Produce the product in the form of a table. This was the output. Is it perfect? No, but I think as a starting point, that's just one quick example of how a teacher can create a custom rubric based on exactly what they want for the audience they want with 1 or 2 sentence prompts, right? So some people say, oh, well, you don't want to offload too much of this to AI, and I get that piece too. But think about the things that you got into teaching for, right? You got into teaching to work with students, to inspire students, to help them, to be an inspiration to them, to engage in authentic inquiry-based projects, to teach about the content that you love. You probably didn't get into teaching to do some of the more rote tasks like designing 4-point scale rubrics, right? So maybe you did, right? But that will probably make you an outlier. So think about some of the things that you do as a teacher that are a little bit more procedural that you could use AI to speed up the process just to get that quick start. And then you can refine it and modify it however you want. But this is just one example of many different teaching resources that you can get that quick jump start on by using some of these tools. Another way you can think about this too is around professional learning, right? So I wrote a blog post last year about using a Bloom's taxonomy prompt for lesson design. So for instance, this one's actually pretty straightforward. You take what you're going to teach and you go to any large language model and you say, generate a Bloom's taxonomy of lesson ideas for students learning magnetism, for instance. You can put in any topic you want. And then it will give you a quick list from remembering up to creating of different ways that you can teach that topic, different learning objectives. This is just one very quick example, but you can see how as a starting point for new ideas for lessons, different ways to differentiate, to get the kids to higher order thinking, it is a nice way to get some ideas as an educator, particularly for folks that might be new to a topic or new to teaching and you're just looking for quick ideas. Or if you've been teaching for a while and you just want to change things up, this is a game changer. It makes it so much faster to spitball ideas. Then we start to transition in our course to tools that are specific to teachers. And a lot of these you've probably heard of before. The one on the screen here is Magic School, but that is not the only game in town. There's a lot of tools out there that are specifically designed for teachers to help them use these AI tools and for students. We'll get to students in a second. But mostly it's for lesson planning, resource creation, assessments. And we've seen that most teachers, when they use these tools, it's really to help hone their lesson plans, but also differentiate assignments. So if you wanted to change the lexile level or translate text, things like that, that tends to be one of the most powerful uses of these tools for teachers that we've been working with. That brings us to the third piece of this, and this has to do with the student learning experience. How can we use AI to redesign it in a way that is empowering and that enhances the experience for students, and then experiment, right? Because no one's really going to get this right and hit a home run on the first swing of the bat, right? We have to iterate and experiment. One of the co-founders of EdTechTeacher, Justin Reich, I have been following his work and following his research for years, and one of the things he talks about is iteration, quick, rapid cycle iteration with teachers in the classroom where you try something, get feedback, and then pivot. So if you try an AI strategy, for instance, one that we talk about in the course, we don't want to have a 2-year pilot and study. Try something quick, try something to get feedback right away, talk to your colleagues, get feedback from students, and then keep experimenting. So what might be part of that? Well, the first is what are some of the student use implications right now? So how do you communicate student use? What are some policies and guidelines that you can set up? We spend a considerable amount of time going through some model guidelines that you can use in your school from K to 12 and even some higher ed examples that you can take a look at. But that'll be an exercise that we go through is what would a student use policy look like? How might that be different for different classrooms and also for different grade levels? Then after that, we talk a little bit about the elephant in the room, which is AI plagiarism. We know that some students are cheating with these tools, so how do we address that? Do we consider using an AI detection tool? If we are going to use a tool, do we know its limitations? Do we know some of the drawbacks of using a tool like that? If we find a student that we think is cheating with AI, what conversations do we have? What does that conversation template look like from teacher to teacher? What are the repercussions for it? How do we teach kids to use it responsibly? How do we teach kids to cite AI sources in their research, which is actually an important skill that we need to be teaching kids how to do, especially as they get towards higher ed. Those are all things that we will be unpacking in the course. And then the other piece of this is, how do you redesign some of your assignments to make them, I don't like using this term, but AI resistant, right? Given the fact that the students have access to this, whether we allow it or not, they're probably going to use it. How can we redesign what those assignments might look like? And we like to pull some resources from school districts, but also from higher ed. So there's actually some public resources that are out there. One of them is from Harvard, the Derek Bach Center for Teaching and Learning. It's right on the Harvard website, and they actually shared some of the guidance that they're providing on how to redesign, for instance, your writing assignments, given that students have access to these tools. So it's not just about teaching kids what you can and can't do. It's also about redesigning what it is that they're doing, given that they have these tools. Right. So that's going to be another part of this course, and that continues to evolve now that these tools are getting more pervasive across K-12. Then we also think about ways that you can use AI in different ways in your class. So it's not just about students using AI to craft 5 paragraph essays, right? So that's the big thing that's getting all the headlines, but there's so much more that AI can do. One example could be using some of the AI output and using it as a case of like the actual lesson itself. So I know a lot of teachers are actually using, whether it's image generation or some of the text, and the strategy, they're actually using it to identify some of the faults in what came out. How do you analyze some of that output and identify maybe there was some stereotypes or biases or just outright hallucinations and things that were wrong with the output? Can you identify those? Right. And that's a higher order thinking exercise that a lot of teachers are diving into. We'll give you tons of examples of that. We also talk about different ways that you can use AI image generation tools as part of a lesson for student creativity and creation. We'll talk a bit about AI chatbots and tutors, how you might be able to craft your own, students can craft their own prompts, and then use those in a lot of different ways to help with studying or learning different concepts and ideas. This is something that I think is really going to take off because also it's not just about tutoring to learn about something. A lot of folks that have experimented with this realize that you can also use these AI chatbots to assume roles and personas, and students can have like mock conversations, maybe practice and prepare for a debate using an AI chatbot to go back and forth, maybe chat with a historical figure. There's a lot of different really interesting tools that are out there. Some of them have caught a lot of flack though. So we're also going to talk about how, maybe having a chatbot assume the role of Benjamin Franklin may not be the best idea and why. And we'll unpack that as well, because there's a lot to that that conversation. But that's one of the values of this cohort is that we can take a deeper dive into these issues, see what you guys think, and then come to some specific strategies that we can use in the classroom. One example of a tool that we will be spending some time on is a tool called School AI. And they just did a quick rebrand, of course, for back to school, but that's just one example of a tool that's made for teachers and students in which you can go in and engage with kind of a customizable AI chatbot as part of the classroom. So that'll be another part of the course is how do we discuss some of the student use and student implications of those. And that brings us to our last piece is that's the idea of teaching AI and information literacy as part of the curriculum. And that's something where as much as educators need to learn more about what generative AI and AI literacy is, so do students. So we'll also be sharing some resources and guides on how can you teach some of these ideas to kids, even in an elementary level, right? So we will give examples of how you can teach elementary students about some of these concepts all the way up to high school seniors and beyond. And a lot of schools are not really set up for teaching an AI curriculum necessarily. So it doesn't have to be like a computer science teacher that does this. We're going to show you very practical strategies that you could weave this into small pockets of time throughout the curriculum. And I think a lot of these ideas are merging, right? So they have information literacy, media literacy, digital literacy, AI literacy. I think we need to stop separating all this stuff because they're so interwoven and related that we need to have a more consistent approach to all of those. Because, for instance, how can you be AI or information literate without knowing anything about AI literacy? Especially given so much of the information out there is, guess what? It's generated by AI. So I think that that's something that we will be discussing in depth in our course, and I think is something that's going to be evolving rapidly throughout this school year. Okay, so that's it for the overview of the topics. Hopefully that gave you a little bit of a taste of the things that we will be discussing in the course. As I mentioned, if you want to take a look at more specifics with the topics that we'll be covering each week, that is listed there. And then before we close, we're actually at the end of our 30-minute webinar here. If you guys do sign up before September 1st, we will give a $50 credit. All right, so you guys will get a $50 discount if you sign up by then. We also will have some referral programs set up as well. So even after September 1st, if you refer a colleague or anyone else in your network, then we will also honor that early bird discount even beyond the 1st if you refer someone to our course. Okay, so I'm going to pause the recording. I'm going to open up if anybody has any questions. Otherwise, for the folks that are watching this recording, we really hope that you guys can join our cohort this year. It was an amazing experience last year. We all learned so much together. I'd love to have you guys be just part of our EdTech teacher family, become part of our learning community. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out anytime. It's Driscoll@edtechteacher.org. Or if you want to reach out to everyone else on our team, it's admin@edtechteacher.org. All right, thanks. And I hope to see you in the course.